Hi, my name is Martin and I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about FP3 and qualifying from Silverstone for the 2025 F1 British Grand Prix. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're going well. Let's start with the conditions. A little bit cooler than what we had yesterday, and I think a little bit gustier, a little bit windier as well. Wind still coming in from the south/southeast, and that's giving us the troubles breaking down into turn 3, similar to what we saw with Lance Stroll yesterday, which I showed you guys in my post-practice video. I think this is an equalizer for the cars. I think yesterday, with McLaren just showing their strength again in the high speed with the heat. I think now that it's a little bit cooler, there's more to be said for switching on the tyres and the preparation. So I think it is an equaliser. I think we're going to see a close, tight qualifying. And therefore, I think whoever gets the pole has obviously done a really good lap. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be because their car is a weapon or a machine around Silverstone. So I'm looking forward to qualifying. I think it's going to be a driver's qualifying. Let's kick off with FP3. Middle of the way through the session, I was watching George. We were on board with him and he made 2 high-speed differential adjustments going into the S's and coming out of the S's. Remember, the differential controls the rotation inside rear wheel, outside rear wheel, and George is playing with that in the high speed setting, going into the S's and coming out of the S's. Really good. You guys know on the channel, I'm a massive fan of the drivers solving their own problems, playing with the tools, being curious, not necessarily phoning the engineer and trying to get a solution approved back to them. I think that's the long way around and also the least accurate way around. I think if a good driver can be more than a driver, diagnose, problem solve, play, explore, and be curious, then you're looking at someone more than just the racing driver. You're looking at a problem solver. And I think that's really important. Let me bring up the pictures now. I'll show you guys what we're talking about. Okay, so this is the first one I got. This is into the S's. This is Maggots, first left hand. I think it's turn 10 or 11, I want to say. But the key here is that his right thumb has gone on this blue toggle called high speed, and that's the high speed differential, using it to control the amount of rotation that he gets into these corners. You can see it just pop up here, diff high speed 3. So, obviously 3, 4, 5, 6 are going to be, it's either going to be diff tighter or diff more open. I don't know how they've got it set up, but that was interesting. And I'll show you guys the change on the exit as well. So this is the change on the exit. Now the screen cut away before it flashed up on his dash, but you see his right thumb going for exactly that toggle that we spoke about. So it's the high speed differential now that he's either going to put back to the original setting as he heads into Stowe corner. Now, just show you guys a picture of the Mercedes wheel as well. The toggle that we're looking at here is this one on the top right. It's the high-speed diff. If you guys haven't seen my video of me running through what I think all of these tools do, how to use them, and how I would have adjusted the Mercedes steering wheel layout, I'll put a link to that video in the description below. It's not a popular video, it doesn't have heaps of views or anything, but I think if you watch it, you'll find a lot of value in it because, like I say, I'm explaining all of the tools and I explain why I place the buttons where I place them. For example, I don't think pit lane speed limiter deserves prime real estate on the upper right thumb. That's a button that you can just do away with and put down the bottom. It's not that important. And then you've got down here your brake balance increase and brake balance decrease. All the way down the bottom, not easily accessible, and therefore it's not promoting the drivers to be able to play with it. If you put those 2 buttons in prime real estate positions, maybe you're going to get the drivers more curious and want to play with it a little bit more. So anyway, I'll link that video in the description below. But yeah, trust me, it's a cool video, and yeah, leave a comment there on what you think about it. Now, notwithstanding all of that changes and George's curiosity, he was still struggling into turn 3 in this session. Again, we spoke about the wind, speed, direction, and magnitude. So I think that's potentially the problem that George is having into there. I'm pretty sure George is not an idiot. I think he will clean it up for qualifying. But it was interesting to see that more than once George locked up that inside front tire on the run down to turn 3. So suggesting he's braking a little bit late and hard. It needs to come earlier and softer. Probably that situation will clean up. If it still happens, all you got to do is migrate your brake balance towards the rear as that corner unfolds. That's your brake migration tool. Now, I just wanted to talk to you guys about why the diff changes. Why is this so important in this track and at this current time, July 2025, with the cars that we have? Well, like I said yesterday, there's a balance shift that happens between the cars as they move through the air and gain speed. As they gain speed, they gain downforce, and they don't necessarily gain downforce equally at the front and the rear. The front tends to be more powerful than the rear when the downforce builds. I'll just show you guys on the whiteboard a better explanation. Essentially, the cars move from slow speed understeer, that's on the left here, and as that downforce and speed builds, the cars tend to oversteer. And so this here over here is in the high speed. And so it's important, therefore, that you're pretty on top of the diff controls, right? Your high speed diff, your slow speed diff, your entry diff, exit diff, however they want to call it, because essentially you're solving for the car's handling at these ranges. Also in the low speed, it's active as well. It is a mechanical tool, so it's going to work the whole way through the speed range. So that's why it's important that you optimize for that, because you're trying to solve for the slow speed understeer and then dial back the high speed oversteer. I suspect that's what George was changing. You know how it popped up number 3, and I can't tell you what number 3 is. I suspect he was trying to fix for this high speed oversteer. Now, the reason that I know that was because 3 or 4 other drivers in the session had high speed oversteer. If you watch Carlos Sainz do turn 1 in Cops, as he's going through Cops, the rear just really over rotates and starts to let go. And I think it would be very rookie to start to look at the rear wing and say, oh, we need to put more rear downforce on, because downforce always comes with a penalty. Yeah, crank on a bit of rear wing, it's going to help you in Cops, but you're going to be a parachute down the straight now. So I don't like to go for rear wing in that situation. I would go for exactly what George was changing. Just tighten up the high speed diff on the entry to Cops, Carlos, and then next time he goes through, it's probably going to be fine. So that's an easy fix, but that's your first indication of some oversteer. Kimi Antonelli on the radio, he comes through, says, I had a massive moment through turn 12. Again, Antonelli loves to complain to his race engineer about his car handling issues. It was oversteer in turn 12, over rotation. Bono replies, yep, that's what the overlay says. So Bono's, in the data, in the laptop, not necessarily watching the onboard, and Kimi Antonelli. So again, it's 2 things I'm saying there. Number 1, it's the engineers being engineers. Oh, yep, we see it on the data. Okay, cool. And so what are we going to do about it? I guess that's the first call out. Second call out is it's, again, the high speed oversteer, this balance shift that I showed you guys on the whiteboard before. Gabby's crash, same spot, I believe, where Kimi was on the radio, turn 12. That's Cops, Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, that's Beckett's, I believe, where Gabby had that oversteer moment. Had the oversteer moment. Again, the high speed diff is your friend. And I think when he went for the counter steer, the opposite lock, he really went for it. So the car actually jackknifed one way and then the other way because of the amount of opposite lock he put in there. So happy and glad that he's safe as well. So those 3 oversteer moments, Carlos is in Cops, Gabby's and Kimi Antonelli's in the S's, and Carlos is just before the S's, show you that these cars are tending towards high-speed oversteer in the S's that we have here in Silverstone. I wanted to talk to you guys briefly about the final corner as well. Just following on from yesterday, everything we said is true. There's 3 topics on the docket and 3 problems with that final corner. Number 1, it's a chicane. Therefore, if you're not familiar with the 7 technical corners, you can jump on my website, download a cheat sheet. There's chicanes, hairpins, S's, double apex corners, and then your 3 long corners. In each of those corners, there's a specific technique that I'm looking for that's required. In chicanes, it's the first entry curb. So Charles actually cleaned that up as at today. He absolutely nailed the final chicane with beautiful technique. I'll show you guys that in a second. The second thing is the rear locking over the crest into the final chicane. This was Charles Leclerc again, rear locking into the final chicane. So whilst he nailed the entry curb, struggling with the braking into there. And the third issue is the opening of the lap issue that we spoke about in the live stream and the video yesterday. Just if you are the leader and you're planning to open your lap, if you are the leader and you're planning to kick off the race with a restart, where do you kick it off? Do you kick it off at Stowe or do you kick it off out of the exit of the final chicane? If you do it out of the exit of the final chicane, it's risky because, as I'm about to show you, traction is an issue out of there at slow speed. I'll bring up some of those videos now. So this was yesterday, Charles into the final chicane. And I said, look, he didn't really take that first entry curb well and found himself climbing across the exit curb. That's not what you want to do. You want to get stuck in to the first entry curb with a big armful of lock. And after you do that, the rest of the chicane is happy days. That's the way to take chicanes. So I'll show you guys how he's improved on that now come FP3. So he gets into that first part much better. You see the car go over that bump, not a problem at all. And that's what I'm looking for. And it just means your exit is so smooth. Actually, he gives it a really healthy input of steering lock. That's exactly what I'm looking for and what I said you need to do. And he's climbing all over that entry curb. And the car bounces, but it's settled. And then it makes this part so much more straightforward. It's all traction, open the steering wheel, do your short shifting, throttle shape. It's all the straightforward stuff after that. But the key is the first entry curb. So good job to see Charles clean that up. Now, I spoke about braking over this crest. None of the commentators picked this up. They were like, oh, it's cold tires or, you know, too much rear brake, for example. But there's a problem with this corner. A fundamental corner characteristic is that you're braking over a crest. It's a good shot, actually, which I think shows you the magnitude of the crest. You can barely see the car as it's coming over the crest now. And then as it pops, just as it pops over the peak of that crest, the rear then gets unloaded and it's easy to lock the rears. So again, your solution is your brake balance goes forward into such a corner. Now, the third issue that we spoke about is opening of the lap. And if you are the lead driver trying to open up safety car restart to kick this race off after a safety car, you don't want to do this. And we saw Pierre Gasly do this yesterday as well. With the cold tires, try to open the lap from the Vale club chicane, and then, yeah, you just see Lewis can't put his foot down. There's just no grip on the exit, no traction. The rears aren't ready. And so the solution, we said, was to kick the race off back at Stowe corner so that then you can brake into the final chicane. Remember, don't lock the rears into there, and then kick the race off thereafter. If I can just show you quickly what the section would look like braking into that final chicane, it's kind of something like that. I've exaggerated a little bit here, but essentially the car comes up over this crest and you start to brake from this position. So this is the crest and this is going downhill towards the corner and the car's coming over. And as it does, then you get this kind of lift at the back and it's easy to lock the rears. And so that's what a crest looks like in section. This is if you were standing off to the side of the racetrack, looking at the racetrack, for example. So if I just draw it in plan into the final chicane, for example, like that, if you were standing here or a man here looking across, then this is the section that you would see. And that's very important to do that on your Thursday track walk, because then you know you've identified your crest and you know the solution, which is that the BB's got to go forward into such a corner over a crest. Ollie Bearman's crash entering the pit lane was, well, it was rookie crash. I guess he was just trying to work out where is the latest he could brake into that corner. Again, it's a case for which is safer, locking the rears or locking the fronts. I always say to my drivers, if you had to pick one, either you want to lock the rears or you're going to lock the fronts. 100% every day of the week, you're taking the front locking because it's safer. You lock a front, nothing happens. The car just slides and goes straight forward. You lock a rear, however, you saw with Charles the instability you can get, and you also saw with Ollie Bearman how out of control the car can be when you lock the rear. So that's why I say always start with the brake balance forward and then like bring it back as you lock. I'd rather you lock fronts than lock rears. So this was a case of Ollie Bearman locking the rears on the pit lane entry. Hopefully he learns from that and it doesn't affect his qualifying session. FP3 results on the screen in front of you. Have a look at this. We've got a Ferrari on top. So it's game on. Lewis's lap was, I think it was interrupted with the red flag from Bortoletto's crash. So he was also purple, as you can see, in the first sector. Now the first sector is where Lewis has been taking that tight line into turn 4 that we spoke about yesterday. So that's helping him, I think, into such a corner. Also the tight line braking into turn 3 as well. Just glancing the top speeds, Hamilton 325, Leclerc 320, Tsunoda 328. I think it depends. A slipstream, I think we'll be looking at 320, 322, but I think Ferrari have a healthy top speed as compared to McLaren, which means if they can out-qualify the McLarens in qualifying, it'll be hard to pass them. You know, the car's very quick and slippery in a straight line. Verstappen looking stronger today, so good to see. He's not far off Leclerc here, so he'll be much happier. The car just wouldn't turn. And as we spoke about, all of the 3 drivers, Carlos Sainz, Kimi Antonelli, and Gabby Bortoletto with their oversteer, well, that whether or not the wind and the temperature has pushed the cars more that way, that's helping solve for Max's issue because he was stacked with understeer yesterday. So whatever it is that they've changed or the conditions have changed, Max has rocked up today much happier with the balance of that Red Bull. Tsunoda and Bearman as well, call-outs, Albon, good lap time. And I think Russell and Antonelli have some work to do. They really need to turn that car around before qualifying. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get in there as well. But I think notwithstanding, we are going to see a very close qualifying session come Q3 today. Q1 results are on the screen in front of you. It was a little bit drizzly in this session early on. And then we had that fear, didn't we, that Lewis Hamilton was not going to get through because Ferrari underfueled him for his final run. He did make it through, and it turns out he went on to compete for pole as well. Max Verstappen topping the session. Now, I think he's trimmed out a little bit of downforce going into this session. If you were with us on Friday, I think it was Friday, yesterday's video, I said, guys, there's heaps of grip on this track. What are you going to do therefore to make a difference and make an advantage? I said, just guys, trim out downforce as much as possible, because you know what? Cops is still going to be flat. Maggots is still going to be flat. All your flat corners are still going to be flat, but you're going to be getting that advantage. I think Max has gone. That's a sim move, guys, by the way. That's how I know that one is, because that's what you would do in the sim. You're not going to lug around that downforce. So I think that's what Max has done. He's trimmed out the downforce coming into qualifying, and he's got some mega top speed there. So he's showing 325, which is faster than anyone around him. Next quickest would be Sonoda, 324. I'm not sure why Sonoda's actually in purple 324 when you've got Verstappen there on 325. But there you go. Max has just trimmed it out and gone all in. So, mate, hats off for that. That is a great call. Hulkenberg struggled to open his lap. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but same sort of thing that we saw with Pierre Gasly opening his lap in practice, and Hamilton as well that I showed you guys just before. And we need to talk about Franco Colapinto's crash as well. I'll bring up the video now and we'll talk to it together. So this is hit here into the final chicane. This is pretty much the story of qualifying this chicane. We'll get onto it in Q3, but essentially Franco's done, like, it's broken the whole chicane rule here. Hasn't got sufficiently into that entry curve, like we said, and that's where it all starts. If I just pause it, here, he's about a meter off where he needs to be. He's missed that red part. You can see drivers even starting to bring up a little bit of whatever it is, painted grass here on the inside, this little triangle that forms, which means cars are actually running over that piece of track. Franco's missed his mark there. Now, at this point, you've got to respect and identify, okay, I've made a mistake. I'm offline. I'm tight into this corner. You should be able to anticipate the next 2 or 3 steps that I'm going to be tight here. Traction's going to be a problem. I could be wide on the exit. Those are the sort of things that you would do if you're an anticipatory driver. I speak on this channel a lot about what an anticipatory driver is, and it's exactly that. If I've done this, then what can I expect thereafter? Generally, I speak about that with regards to the steering wheel, like when you're turning and braking at the same time, when you're doing direction change. You know, you can anticipate what the car's going to do and then respond to it and be ready for that. And anticipation is so much better than reaction. Reaction is like, oh, something's just happened. I need to respond to that. Anticipation is like, nah, I knew it was going to happen and I was prepared for it. So this is where Franco's got to be like giving this second part a little bit of respect. He's also mistimed his turn in. He's already turned in twice into the second part here. Finds himself wide. He's still hacking away at the wheel. On the exit here, we spoke about what happens when the floor touches the ground. You lose all the downforce there. And so, like, I don't know, I just kind of feel like some of Franco's mistakes are, yeah, they're very basic. And I know he's a rookie, but I'm just not sure he's given the guidance at this point in his career with the right people around him and doing the right practice, and he's diligent. I'm not sure, because these mistakes keep popping up, unfortunately for Franco. And that meant that he was out in Q1, of course. Just before we get over to the Q2 results, I wanted to show you guys, I'm not sure if you saw it, but in between, where are we, Cops, Maggots, Beckett's, it was in between Beckett's and Chapel. Max, on his first run in Q2, had a massive wobble there. But the camera that you guys saw was probably the external camera, and you might not have picked it up if you saw it. I'll show it to you guys now, but it basically underlines and highlights the anticipation piece, how brilliant Max is at that, and how little downforce he's running, that the car is on a knife edge through the S's in that section of racetrack. I'll bring up the video now so you can fully appreciate it. Here it is. So as I say, entering the S's, and this was at normal speeds, so see if you can pick it up. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but I'll slow it down for you. It's here as he comes through the left-hander of 12. There. You see the movement in that car? That's a massive, like, save for Max. And again, like, I'm not sure if you guys saw it or if anyone saw it, but that's the sort of thing that I'm looking for in these sessions, is like, what are the drivers dealing with and why? So in Max's case, it's because he's trimmed all the downforce off. So he's going to have to live with that car on the knife edge once it's loaded up in the S's. But he was reaping rewards like for all the full throttle time, the massive amount of full throttle time that we have here in dry session in qualifying Silverstone 2025. So the Q2 results and who was kicked out: Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda in the sister Red Bull, Isaac Hadjar after he made it into Q2 when Liam Lawson didn't. So I think that's not a bad effort from him. Alex Albon was complaining about some sort of setup direction that they went in, which didn't work out. And Esteban Ocon being, well out qualified by his teammate Ollie Bearman. So even though he made that mistake in FP3 locking up, and I think he does have a penalty for that, by the way, he's got some mega pace, does Ollie Bearman. So I think if he can just surround himself with professionalism. I've got two pieces of coaching that I have. One is technical and one is tactical. Technical is all lap time, and Ollie Bearman would be like tick, tick, tick. Lando Norris is typically tick, tick, tick in this area as well. But then the tactical side, you're just being more professional and going about your job in a more professional way. Again, Ollie's a rookie, so I'm not going to come down hard on him for that. But that will come. Once that comes, I think Ollie Bearman's going to be, a decent, well-rounded professional racing driver because he's got the speed, and that's kind of the hardest thing to crack. And once you crack that, it's easy to build around all the other aspects of it. Interesting, the session was topped by Hamilton. I just want to glance Max's top speed. It is 325 on the right. Hamilton topped the session after those Ferraris did a late run. And Hamilton again with that nice sector one with that tight line as well. I'll be keeping an eye out for that in Q3. Now, I'm not sure if you guys saw again on Max's first run in Q3, didn't trouble the apex at turn 4 at all. And we've been speaking about it. I still got my notes on the whiteboard. I spoke about it yesterday. And I said, Max likes to find this red piece of track over here on the entry in order to carry the most speed in the corner. And you just can't from that position. You see my red line doesn't actually touch the apex. And the green tight line, the one Lewis was driving, says, yeah, we're just going to dive straight in, save all of the extra meters. And that's the difference between tight line versus wider entries. This is not short corners. Don't confuse this with short corners. You need a long corner to be able to do a short corner. This is a wide entry position, and the tight line says you're not going to find that wide entry position. So Max is in red, Lewis is in green. Now check this out that I saw on Max's first run in Q3 when he was competing for pole. You see Max going into turn 3. Now this is turn 4. I'll slow it down later, but have a look at this. Like literally talk about going around the corner. Like even from this angle, you can see that the car just does not want to make it in to turn 4. Now, the reason for that, again, I know it sounds strange, me commenting on a 4-time world champion's racing line, but the reason for that, if we go back to the whiteboard, is because he's asking the car to do a few things here. Number one, change direction in the red line. If I just zoom in, he's asking the car to do a direction change from low speed. That's this direction change here, which I'm highlighting for you guys now in red. Change direction from low speed and then cover this big track width that we have available here in Silverstone as well. So he's asking the car to do quite a lot at low speed when the downforce is not significant, like we spoke about before, and just doesn't make it in. That's not good for front tires. That's not good for lap time. That's not good for anything, as you can see in Max's first run. And I'll be keen to see once we get a shot of it, how did he get pole? How did he clean this up? How did he actually get into turn 4? What was his solution there? Did he drive a tight line or did he just turn in a bit earlier? I'm not sure. And how does that stack up against the likes of Lewis in the telemetry? We're going to have a look at that in a little bit as well. Now, look, Q3 session for me was, I don't know, I just feel like it was one marred by mistakes, in the final chicane, by the way. So you had Oscar Piastri's mistake in the final chicane, just running a little bit wide on the exit, like similar to what Franco did. Not getting the full traction potential of the McLaren. You had Lando turning in too early, using too much of that curb and just bouncing across it too much and then ruining the final chicane there. And then you had Lewis Hamilton's issues in the final chicane as well. I'll be keen to have a look at the telemetry in a second, but let's just have a look and appreciate the results. So max 328 top speed, and that's heaps more than anyone near him. That's 9 more than Piastri, 7 more than Norris, 6 Ks more than Russell, 4 on Hamilton and 6 on Leclerc as well. So I'm talking about the difference in top speed here. Max took my philosophy on. He's like, yes, stuff it. I'm going to take all the wing off, get this car on pole, and we'll talk about it later. You know, if it rains, he's got clean air. With that sort of top speed, he's going to be so difficult to pass in a straight line. He can aero wash through the S's. You know, like Oscar in P2 is going to have to take some really tight lines into turn 4 to be able to mount an attack. And it's going to be the whole Austria thing again. It's going to be hard from that position. So Max done, like, you know, we were thinking on the same page here. Just pull the wing out of it, take pole, and go from there. I think that's the best chance. I think Max in that Red Bull with the normal, very normal aerodynamic setup, the one that the team just bring to the race for optimal lap time, you know, could have put him anywhere 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere through there behind the McLarens. So I think it was the right thing to do to pull it out. And the reason we're pulling downforce out, and I recommended that and Max did that, is because, like I said before, the track has got so much full throttle time. What are you going to do? Cops is still flat. Maggots is still flat. Beckett's is still flat. These corners that are normally 50-50 where downforce can help you are still going to be flat. And so you're just going to take advantage by having the less wing because there's no DRS in that section of racetrack. So good call by Max, brilliant lap. And look at the sectors as well. So this is interesting. 27.4, we're going to have a look at the telemetry. That involves the turn 4 that he didn't meet the apex on in his first run. He smashed everyone in that first sector. So I'd be curious to see what happened there. The next best is Hamilton on the 27.50. So they're very close. But I suspect that Max is, you know, surely with that sector 1, he's made it into the turn 4 apex. Let's have a look at telemetry now and see what's going on. All right, so check this out. This is Verstappen versus Hamilton, and this is a really good indication of how helpful the top speed is. Because I spoke about those corners, the Cops, Maggots, Beckett's that are flat, and where there's no DRS and where you can benefit from the top speed. You can see the speed trace. I'll just zoom in on that section of track. You can see that blue speed above the red speed. And what you see is the delta. This is Hamilton exiting Luffield, the long corner of constant radius, turn 7, slightly ahead. And Max just canes him on all that full throttle time, such that he's pulled 2, 3, 3.5. He's pulled 3.5 tenths before Chapel just by doing nothing. Just that's free lap time. That's just Max keeping his foot flat pretty much. Okay, there's a little bit of a lift here for Cops from both of them. But that's 3.5 tenths of free lap time. And so in with the soft compounds in the dry track in Q3, that was the play for all of the teams. I'm surprised that only Max did that. I mean, Max did it probably because he had nothing to lose, but that was the play for Ferrari. That was the play for McLaren. Everyone should have been trimming out that wing and competing for pole, I feel like. And I spoke yesterday about the whole wet setup thing, and I said, no, there'll be parts of the track there'll be parts of the race when it's going to be dry. There will be aero wash will be a factor. If you've got top speed, you're going to be difficult to pass. You want clean air in the rain. You want to see where you're going. You want to stay out of the carbon fiber zone. There are so many advantages to getting to the front of the grid. So again, I'm surprised more teams didn't fight and compete for this one and trim off a little bit of wing, but that's what it's worth. And yeah, so that's my first insight for you guys. Now, second insight, just going into the final chicane, we say Lewis blew it like he would have had to find 2.5 tenths to compete for pole. So Lewis was never in that one, I don't think, because of the just because of how much time he'd lost through the high speed with Max with that low downforce. Let's have a look at, say, Piastri. So again, same thing, guys. You see this delta, the same things going on. Max is just cleaning guys through that full throttle section of track. And then, I think Oscar, he was actually going into the final chicane. This is Oscar Piastri having to find 2.3 tenths. And he could have found it because he ended up finding 1.3 with all of that clumsiness and all of that mistake. I think it would have been possible to find that back. And that's where the rear wing can help you. You brake nice and late, and the traction on the exit out of 17 could have been stronger as well. So I think it was on the table for a McLaren, given that not because they were 2.5 tenths down, but given that they found 1.5 tenths in the final chicane in the hands of Piastri with a very poor, clumsy exit. Yeah, I think that was definitely on the table for Oscar. He could have done that. Let's have a look at Lando. Yeah, again, you see this delta increase to the magical 3/10 mark, or to this one gets to 2.5 tenths. And then again, you see towards the back end of this, like even when the DRS is open, in all the, you look at the track dominance on all the straights, Max is just destroying. So that's pretty fun to watch. Again, I think Lando, it was on the table again for Lando. He found 1.5 tenths in the final chicane as well with his clumsiness on the entry curb. I just want to see with Lewis and just start to compare as well the turn 3 and 4 situation. Actually, if you have a look here, I think Lando's made a bit of a clumsy mistake here because, yeah, there's time on the way in, but Max has got that back immediately on the way out as well. So Max has got a really good run out of turn 4. I just want to compare a few drivers against Max and see if there were any opportunities in turn 4 for Max. I'll probably grab Piastri and Hamilton's lap, see what was going on there. Not really, eh? Max has done a pretty decent job in turn 3 and 4 compared to them. So he's obviously met with the apex. Surely, I haven't seen the onboard yet because I've literally just come off watching it. But I'd be keen to see Max's onboard and see how he got on through turn 4. Presumably he's met the apex somehow. So look, guys, there's nothing else I can tell you. Like these delta traces all look, you know, fairly similar. They're all lifting through cops. Who's this? Hamilton did a really good job through the S's as well, despite the car, you know, he's carrying that wing, of course. But yeah, there's not much else to say. This is a mega job. I think a mega call by Max Verstappen. If I can just come back for a second. This is a mega call by Max. This is a racer's call to be able to trim off the downforce. It's not an engineering call. The engineers wouldn't do it because they'll be like, oh, we need to look after the tires with the high downforce, and what if it rains? The engineers are going to think, Max, the racer's call was like, no, the whole track's flat. What are we doing here? You know, take the rear wing off almost. So yeah, that was a racer's call. Kudos to Max for that call, and kudos to him for what looked like a really, really special quality lap under pressure. When everyone else lost their head, Max was able to keep his and take pole. Excellent, beautiful job. Now, just as we talk about the start, it's pretty self-explanatory as you go down into turn 3. Yeah, you need to be on the defensive. I'm 100% sure Max will cover that off, provided he gets a half decent start. I'm sure Max will defend. And then I think it's going to be just aero wash situation. And what I'll be looking for is the tight line from Oscar Piastri. He's going to have to use that in a few places, guys, if he's going to mount an attack on Max. He's going to have to use the tight line in turn 4. He's going to have to use the tight line in breaking into Brooklands and Luffield as well to get out of the dirty air. So I'll bring up the track map and show you guys what Oscar needs to do to mount an attack. Okay, so he's going to need the tight line into turn 4 because that's where you can potentially get aero washed. I think the entry to 6 is very important as well. It's not possible to do in 7, so there'll be no tight line action there. And I think he's going to need to try to do tight line through the S's and just offset his car a little bit to Max, because otherwise, particularly 13, it's the longest one. Remember, S's always get tighter as you go through. So particularly 13 Chapel is going to be hard to get a run. Now, Max has got mega top speed. That's the problem now. Even if Max's car is slow and Oscar's all over him, the problem is the aero wash in 13 and the top speed that Max is going to have down the hanger straight. Oscar definitely needs to play a tight line into 15 and not screw up the front left by sitting behind Max there, and then just go again. So actually, I think now into 4 is probably the best spot now that I think about it. Why? Because the McLaren's got a lot of front end grip at low speed. And so when Max starts to struggle and not make the apex into turn 4, bang, that's your chance, is probably to meet the apex at turn 4, get good acceleration, and then, you know, DRS, and away you go and attack into 6. So I got my eyes actually on 6 now that I look at it. And if I'm Oscar, I think that's where the potential for an attack is going to come tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys. I love the qualifying session. I enjoyed it. So far, I've enjoyed everything up to this weekend. I hope you have too. If you've learned something from this video, or you liked it, or you had a question or thought, comment it in the comment section below. Join the conversation. I will be there when I wake up tomorrow morning, answering all your questions, responding to the comments, predictions for the win. Yeah, so I'm looking out for all those things that we spoke about: tight lines, defense into turn 1, where to do safety car restarts, the rain, of course, wet lines. So let's keep an eye out for that. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.